First thing he does is he uses the Hegelian dialectic, right? So feudalism is the thesis, industrial capitalism is the antithesis, and then together they will create communism. Why? Okay. So for Marx, embedded in capitalism is the seeds of its demise. And there are three reasons why. Okay? First is industrial capitalism is imperial. It's all-consuming. It expands. And as a result, it's going to create a global proletariat. And because they're all oppressed, they're going to come into consciousness together and recognize that only through collective action can we liberate ourselves from the capitalist class. All right? And because the proletariat is the majority of people, 99%, then the 1% have no chance. Okay? That's number one. Number two is the idea of technology. Capitalism gives rise to new technology which creates surplus value and surplus labor. It basically makes our job easier, okay? In which case, we don't have to work as hard as before in order to create value. Okay, so that's technology. So for example, AI, right? And the third is the idea of crisis in capitalism. Okay, crisis in capitalism. And what this means is, for Marx, capitalism is fundamentally unsustainable. It will collapse at a certain point. Why? Well, there are many reasons why, okay? So for Marx, the main problem is overproduction. You're producing all these goods, but because you're impoverishing everyone, no one's going to buy these goods. In which case, the economy is going to collapse, right? That's one possibility. Another possibility is presented by a man named Thomas Piketty, okay? And he wrote a famous book called Capital in the 21st Century. And he's working off Marx. And what he believes the fundamental paradox of capitalism is a problem of financialization. So all this is saying is this. At first, we have to build a factory to generate wealth, right? But once we have generated enough wealth, we want to take this wealth and go invest it somewhere because it's easier for us and we can make more money that way. But over time, as capitalism grows and grows, everyone wants to invest, no one wants to manufacture. And what happens then is the financial economy is growing faster than the manufacturing economy. In fact, for Piketty, the financial economy will go at 5%, whereas the manufacturing economy will go at 2%. This means that if you put your money in the stock market, you'll make 5% a year. But if you open a restaurant, or you create a factory, or you do something useful, you make 2% a year. So no one wants to work anymore, right? So for Piketty, capitalism will have to end at some point. Then you have a name named Carroll Quigley. And he's a historian. We discussed him last week. But he's a historian at Georgetown. He's dead. But he wrote a very famous book called Tragedy and Hope. And he argues that capitalism goes in phases. The first phase is consumer capitalism, where companies are trying to create products that consumers want to buy. Then that leads to financial capitalism, where now companies just want to invest their wealth. But over time, the final stage is the idea of monopoly capitalism, where a few companies control all the resources. Okay? In which case, we pay a lot of money for crappy stuff. And then we don't want to buy anything anymore, okay? So for Marx and for Piketty and for Carroll Quigley, capitalism can only lead to crisis. And then because of the crisis, the proletariat will organize and then rebel and then create a workers' paradise, okay? Which leads to communism. That's the logic of Marx. That is Marx's understanding of history. Okay? All right. So what I'm going to explain now is why would this be popular? Why would this history be popular for people? Because communism was one of the most popular movements throughout the 20th century. Okay? And the problem that Marx diagnoses is capitalism makes people miserable for three reasons. Okay? So the issues of capitalism. The first issue is that it is all-encompassing, all-consuming. So in other words, it just grows and grows. And because it has to grow and grow to create value, it starts wars. So you have imperialism, right? Because as a factory owner, you want to create new markets, you want access to cheaper goods, you want access to cheaper labor. Therefore, you force your government to go invade other countries like China, India, Africa, okay? So capitalism creates wars and human misery all around the world. It's all consuming. It's always expanding. Okay? Second problem with capitalism is that it consolidating. And the idea here is this. Capitalism can only lead to extreme inequality. Why? Because the point of capitalism is to generate as much wealth as possible. So to do that, we want to consolidate our wealth. So maybe there's 10 of us with $1 million each, right? Well, we're better off just putting our money together and then investing it together, right? Which creates massive inequality. So over time, Marx believes that because capitalism is all-consuming and consolidating, it will destroy the middle class. Unless you're super wealthy, you won't have any money, okay? If you are just like a small factory owner, you'll be bought out by a large factory owner. And quite honestly, this is what's happening in the world today, okay? If you are a small house owner in America, well, you're going to be bought out by a company. And then the company's going to use your house to rent to other people, okay? So this is a pattern that's happening throughout the world today, and that's why Marx is seeing a massive resurgence in our world today, right? Now, the third problem is alienating. And here, Marx explains that there are 4 types of alienation. Okay? The first type of alienation is the alienation of labor. And what this means is this. As humans, we want to create stuff. We are fundamentally creative. We want to create art products. We want to cook. We want to teach. We want to express our individuality. Okay? And why we want to do that is when we express our individuality, when we create things, we support the community. Right? So when I teach you guys learn. And when you learn, you feel good, you thank me, and that confirms my humanity. That confirms my individuality. So society is a mechanism for each of us to exchange our creativity in a way that affirms our own individuality. Okay? Does that make sense? All right? The problem with capitalism is it takes use value, okay, what this thing is used for, and replaces it for like exchange value. Okay, which is how much this thing is worth. And these are 2 different opposites, okay? Oh, sorry, these are 2 different concepts. So use value is, I cook a apple pie, and then I give it to you, and you eat it, and you say, wow, this is a really awesome apple pie. Thank you so much. And then you feel good, I feel good, okay? That's use value. Exchange value is, I cook this apple pie, and I give it to someone, who then goes sells to someone. I never meet that person, okay? And I'm not, and I don't know what happens to the pie, but I'm paid like $5 for it, all right? So that's the idea of exchange value. And as such, what Marx says is, this exchange of goods does not affirm our individuality, therefore it makes us miserable, because we don't know why we're doing anything anymore, okay? Before, we were doing things in order to support our community, in order to please other people, in order to affirm our humanity. Now we're just making stuff because of wage labor, right? Wages, to get paid. Okay? So that's alienating for us. Okay? And this makes sense, right? Great. Second is that it alienates us from ourselves. Why? Because as human beings, we are very complex, we are multifaceted, and we're always evolving. But for capitalism, what matters is division of labor, okay? Specialization, because that's what allows for the most rapid industrial growth. And so, in other words, you cease to be you and you become a hand, or maybe a finger, or maybe an eye, or maybe an ear, okay? But you cease to be complete. You're just like a cog in the machine. You're just a piece of the puzzle. And that alienates you from who you are really. It prevents you from achieving your full potential as a creative, vibrant human being. Okay, that's the second issue. The third issue is it alienates us from nature. Okay, why? Because capitalism grows by exploiting humans and by exploiting nature. It cuts down trees. It destroys the environment. It creates air pollution. We can no longer drink clean water. Okay? It destroys the nature. And it makes us feel like we must destroy nature if we are to feed our families. So it alienates us from our nature, whereas historically, we have been in a symbiotic relationship with nature where we thank nature for feeding us. But we're always replenishing, we're always protecting nature. All right? And the fourth type of alienation is the alienation from humanity. All right? So before, for most of history, we were cooperating with each other. We were helping each other out, okay? Because that's the only way you could survive. But capitalism forces us to compete against each other, okay? And the example, of course, is school, where because of grades, you see your classmates as competitors, right? But if there are no grades, then you might help each other learn. You might tutor each other in homework and help each other with homework and tests, okay? Okay? So does that make sense? So the idea here is, let's just say that like maybe 5 people have to carry some goods to a store, okay? That's your job. One person falls down, breaks his leg, and cries out for help. Well, we should go help that person, right? But the logic of capitalism is you can't do that because the manager will fine you for being late. Okay, does that make sense? All right, so that's why Marx thinks that this will alienate us from our humanity. And this part of Marx, where Marx diagnoses the problems of capitalism, is considered brilliant, okay? This is a perfect encapsulation of all the issues with capitalism. That was true in the 1850s, in the 19th century, but it's also true today. If you look at the world today, then we also have these issues. And if you analyze Marx's diagnosis of capitalism, then it helps explain why the world is the way it is. Okay?